Hello everyone, welcome back. Happy Monday. How is everyone feeling today? I'm excited. I need this video today. If this is your first time joining me on a Monday, today is a day when I take a break from, teaching makeup, talking about makeup, kind of. And I read your ghost stories that you very kindly sent me this side to this email address right here. So if you have any ghost stories of your own, any paranormal experiences, they don't even have to be paranormal, weird people, weird stalkers. So that is today. Yeah, like I was saying, I need this video today. This video series is very much based on Bailey Sarian's Murder Mystery Makeup Mondays, where she talks about true crime and makeup. I'm sure you all know who she is, but I will leave a link to her channel below. I really want to use this palette, Say That Urban Decay very kindly gifted to me. And it's their, what's it called? Stoned Vibes. I think they mean like crystals and stuff, not like smoked a load of weed. But look at this and tell me what my options are. I have to go kind of purpley, right, to add some kind of depth to it. But maybe we can see what happens. Okay. So today's theme in that case is going to be I'm an older woman. Have I done this already? I'm not sure. I'm an older woman who has had such a luxury life. I've had like all the finest things in life. And one day I have like servants and I'm I'm going to take a bath. But I'm like, I need my bath diamonds. And I wear all these really heavy diamonds when I'm having a bath. But because I've bought too many, they've got so heavy that they drowned me. And I just couldn't keep up in the bath, all because of my greed for diamonds. Okay, so I have on already my eye primer and I've done my brows using Pink Honey, which is, I always talk about this. I never talk about the makeup. Why am I talking about the makeup? I'll leave a link to everything below for you. Okay. Okay, so let's start today's video with a story, which is what we're going to do throughout the whole thing. And this story is called Floating Above My Sister-in-Law, okay? So it says, hi, handsome. Stop. I want to start off by saying I love your channel, keep being awesome. Thank you so much. So my ghost story is not as scary as some of the ones you talked about, but is 100% real and occurs in my boyfriend's home. Let me just say, when people say it's not as scary, it's usually like still scary, so. The first occurrence happened one afternoon. I was coming from the restroom and I heard a glass shatter. When I got to the living room, I saw my boyfriend standing behind their table and his brother was on the other side. They both said that they were talking to each other from across the table and the glass candle that was on it got knocked over onto the floor on its own. We looked at the table trying to investigate how it could have fallen onto the floor. But there were no signs of water, which could have possibly caused the candle to fall. But there was nothing. It's sort of a Mexican thing to have candles lit of religious saints for protection. The candle that fell was one of the Virgin Mary, which creeped us out. Second occurrence. I was talking to my sister-in-law standing outside her room. She was laying on the bed and her door was open. We were having a good conversation and I saw something dark floating on top of her very slowly. The figure is so hard to explain, so I found one on Google which was very similar. As I stared at this figure, she looked at me with confusion. I told her, what the heck is that? And she looked up as it was fading away. She did not see it. And I wish she did. The third incident and the most recent. About 2 months ago. Again, this is in my boyfriend's house. I went to his house and I honestly forgot what I went to pick up. We've all done it. There was no one home and they told me to just come in and they were going to leave the keys outside for me. I got inside and I got to what I went for, and then I was playing with their puppy for a few minutes before I left. Everything was normal. I have this odd tendency to always look back and do a very quick scan of a room before I close the door and leave because I always have a habit of leaving stuff behind. So I did that, and I saw a human figure this time. It was so weird and scary, I didn't want to look up to their face. All I know, stop, is that it was a tall girl, chubby, wearing jeans and a grey sweater. I just thought it was weird because I always imagined ghosts being dressed in ancient clothing or something like that. But it was not in this case. Yeah, I always think as well, like ghosts are always like, oh, this person died here in the 18th century from the Great Plague of the 18th century or whatever. You don't expect it to be like Kim from last week. It's always like you always expect it to be, yeah, like historical. Well, thank you so much for your story. That was great. Thank you. This one is called My Grandma and the Demon. Okay, so hi, here I am with loads of makeup on suddenly. So the one I just listened to, the story I just listened to is about 20 minutes long. So I didn't want to put it right at the beginning of the video. I actually kind of want to put it at the end. So sorry about that. But you can listen to that story at the end of the video and see me doing this at the end. But I didn't want it to be that long at the beginning of the video, if that makes sense. So let's go to, last week I had my brother Marcus read some ghost stories for you guys, and you all loved his voice so much that I thought I would invite him on to read weekly some stories for us. So we're going to listen to him.
Oh, hi Robert. I have a couple of stories for you to do with ghosts. I don't know whether that would be of interest to you, but I'll read them to you now. This one's called Never Human to Begin With. As an anthropologist and a historian, I have a weird interpretation of the afterlife and spirits. Although I had this experience, I'm not sure if I believe it. Even so, I find it fascinating that groups of people around the world with no interactions with other ideologies have the same concept of spirits. It must be true then, no? I live in the house we built 22 years ago, and my neighbour who I grew up with was an elderly Native American man who was the sweetest and most interesting person I've ever come across. One day when I was about 12, I had awoken to scratching on the side of my house, near my window, but thought nothing of it. I lived 2 blocks from one of Indiana's largest parks, and so all kinds of wild animals passed through my neighbourhood. Even so, the scratching became louder. I must also mention that I lived in a 2-storey house, so I thought to myself, what can reach this far up and be that loud? I left my room, walked down the hall to my bathroom, and there, coming out of our guest room, was something I will never forget. It was clearly not human. This thing was about 8 feet tall and had to hunch down, which made his body curve forward. Its arms were so long that they fell and dragged behind its body. There was no face, but instead a mask. This mask had no holes for eyes, but the mouth was carved in a large rectangular shape. The body was pitch black and I could not see through it, but the mask was almost translucent and oxblood red in colour. It made no noise, it did not move. I stood there looking at it and the feeling of despair and sadness loomed over me. The feeling of longing and needing to move on to the next life rushed over me. In front of my bathroom is a staircase leading downstairs, and I cannot express how fast I ran down. It was as if I was flying. My grandparents were not home, so I ran next door to my native neighbour. I cried and told him what I saw and he calmed me down. He smiled and said that I am safe and to wait for him at his home. He promptly grabbed his hand-carved walking stick and a clay jar. He walked to my house and began to pour a purplish-coloured mineral along the house, hitting his stick on the sides of the house and chanted. He then burnt herbs and blew towards the house. After that I never saw the thing again. Years passed and my neighbour was growing ill. I visited him often at the hospital, and whilst my parents left the room I asked him what I was always wondering. What was that thing? I cannot remember the name of it, but it was linked to the tribe's folklore about a demon creature that would feast on the innocence of children, gathering them for strength. These creatures were here before the humans walked the earth, and remain wandering outside, although we don't see them. They scratch the outside of homes to scare and lure those who are most curious. Even so, after some research, it seems that they are different versions for different tribes, but it's still a common folklore. Now that I am older, I assume they still walk amongst us, but I'm no longer able to see them. I am sensitive and feel things, but I try to avoid it. This moment in my life has led me to my career and my interest in how the world interprets and expresses death. This next one is called Creepy Island Holiday. Hi Robert, I'm a big fan of yours and would like to say thanks for teaching me so much about makeup. Okay, so I'm very sceptical, but my mum is a total believer. She has many stories, but this one about a family holiday always stands out. So I grew up in Ireland, and while very young, about 4 years old, my family went on a holiday to this small island called Valentina. That's just off the southern coast of Ireland. My parents rented a small stone cottage that was surrounded by fields and had limited electricity. I remember this fact because it was such a pain to dry my hair. We were booked to stay a week at this cottage. It had amazing views and was surrounded by a traditional stone wall that was very old. However, my mum says that from the moment she set foot in the door, she felt unwelcome. For the first 2 nights, she struggled to sleep and had the feeling of someone standing by the door watching her. She never mentioned this to my dad because he's very sceptical, and she thought he'd think she was mad. However, what happened a few nights later changed all that. One night my parents put myself and my older brother to bed. They stayed in the living area for a while. My mum was on the couch reading with a blanket over her. When they decided to go to bed, they cleaned up the room, turned off the lights, and climbed the wooden staircase very carefully as the thing creaked like crazy. That night my mum actually had no trouble sleeping. She didn't feel any presence watching her, so she fell asleep quickly. However, she was woken by a loud banging noise and a distinctive sound of my brother's voice letting out a single groan. My dad had heard this too and had already opened the door and started to run to the stairs. They looked down into the dark, expecting to see my brother on the floor. He wasn't there. They turned the light on and moved down to the living area, and there on the couch with a blanket draped over him, sound asleep, was my brother. My dad reached out to him and woke him up, asking how he got there, to which my brother replied, "Mummy carried me here." They sat there and let him go back to sleep. They started to discuss what had just happened, and my mum finally told my dad that she couldn't sleep. Turns out he was having trouble sleeping ever since they got there too. They decided to pack up everything, and we left the cottage in the morning. When going to hand back the keys to the owner, they started chatting, and the owner revealed that he had inherited the property after his relatives had passed away. The original owners were very private and proud of their humble home. He also said this wasn't the first time people had left early. There you go. I hope you enjoyed those spooky stories, and I will speak to you in a minute. Goodbye.
Oh my god. Fucking mum carried me there. Can you imagine the horror, That I wouldn't know what to do. I would have to leave. That doesn't make sense. Oh, I got goosebumps. Thank you so much for sending that story. And as to the first story, that is creepy. That is so creepy. But you're so right about all these different cultures having, like, you know, these different spirits and idea what a spirit is, but them all being very similar. And especially from times where communication wasn't that easy across country to country. Yeah, great stories. Thank you so much. Whenever I put foundation on when I do these videos, the camera starts to mess up. Okay, our next story is called My Haunted Child. Camera focus on me. I wasn't sure if I wanted to share this, because whenever I talk about it, something else always seems to happen. A little over 5 years ago, my older sister passed away unexpectedly. At that time, my son was 2 years old. He was pretty close to my sister, so it didn't surprise me that she would come and visit him. Of course, everyone gets a little creeped out when a baby looks off into a corner and laughs or acts like they're looking at someone. I loved it. It just told me that I'm not crazy and that a few things that happened to me really was my sister. Such as her favourite perfume of mine was always being moved, even though I never use it, nor did anyone else. A couple of years after my sister passed, my mum passed away from cancer. My son was 4 years old at this time, and he still showed signs of seeing loved ones. But one day, he started talking about the little boy in the bath. He had never talked about anyone else besides my sister and my mum. So of course, I'm freaked out. But didn't think much of it until my child, who loves baths, refused for about a week to take a bath. And when I would get him in, he would freak out if I turned around or took my eyes off him, even for a second. I was telling my cousin about what was going on, and I was telling her I could see my son sleeping on the couch. All of a sudden, he started thrashing and talking in his sleep like he was absolutely terrified. I didn't know what to do, so I started yelling for my sister and my mum to help him, and I kept telling the unwanted spirit to leave our house. At first, I said it kind of jokingly, but as I watched my child, it really scared me, so I kept saying it with more willpower. As I finished saying it for about the fourth or fifth time, I watched my son stop thrashing, and a smile came on his face, and he was peacefully asleep. I woke him up and asked if he was okay, and he said, Cece, my sister, and Grandma love us, but they have to go away for a while. Ever since that day, I don't believe my son has seen either of them. He is 17 years old now. He has had 1 or 2 incidences happen since we moved into our new house. He has his own huge bedroom in our new place, but has only slept up there once. The one time he did, he came running downstairs in the middle of the night/morning, saying the girl in his room won't leave him alone. He continued to say that she punched him in the face to wake him up. I did what I did before and called on my sister and mum to help him, and even told my son how to make spirits leave him alone. He saw the girl one time after that, and he did say he wasn't happy, but she's not going to bother him anymore. He still won't sleep in his room, but nothing creepy has been happening to him. My older sister passed away at the end of November this last year, so I'm just waiting for him to tell me she's around. I can already feel her, so he might have outgrown seeing spirits now, but I'm not scared of the unknown anymore. Just because I have the best woman I know looking out for us. Oh God. I do want to say what I think happened. I believe when my sister first passed and then my mum, I think them being around us opened us up to other spirits. And that's why they had to go when a little boy was haunting my son. With the girl, I believe she was in the house when we moved in and wasn't happy with my son being in her space. I don't think she is gone, but she leaves us alone, at least him. I've seen her watching me a few times, but I pay no attention to her. I'll update you if something happens due to me talking about all of this. P.S. I love your videos. I've learned so much on techniques and all of that in the little amount of time I found your channel. You're definitely one of the few I make sure I watch every video. Thank you so much. That's such a nice story, apart from the bad bit. But like you said, it's nice to know that you have these people who you know are there to take care of you and look after you and make sure you're okay. So our next story is called My Possession. It's just a trigger warning in here as well of drug use and suicide. So hi Robert, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to start off by saying just how much I enjoy the new Ghosts and Makeup Monday series. Thank you. A little backstory first. When I was 20 to 21, my family and I moved to New Jersey. Shortly after, I ended up rebelling against my parents by dropping out of school and ended up with the wrong crowd. This was also right before I was clinically diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I firmly believe that had a large hand in the way I conducted my life and the series of poor choices I made. Anyway, around that time, I met my oldest son's father. We'll call him Leo. Leo and I started off solid until about 6 months into the relationship when he decided to dabble with crack cocaine again, as that was his drug of choice, literally. It didn't take long to get pregnant. The first time I miscarried at 8 weeks. However, about 7 months later, I found out I was pregnant again. That's when I officially moved in with Leo's grandparents and younger cousin. His grandmother was heavily into Santeria, worshipping saints in the Latin culture, and she'd tell me things that would make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Now, I was raised in a Roman Catholic church until we moved to America, and then started attending Baptist church. Either way, I was not about that shit. For example, she'd tell me how she'd go astroplaning, like it was no big deal. Astroplaning, for those who don't know, is when someone is able to have their soul leave their body and travel wherever they want in the world. So after a few unexplainable experiences and dealing with physical and emotional abuse, I packed my bags and went to go and live with my parents again. Leo's grandmother wasn't too happy about that, and I believe she had everything to do with what I'm about to tell you next. Once I left the apartment, things did not get better. I became extremely depressed, withdrawn, angry, and outright violent towards others and even myself. I was between 3 and 4 months pregnant, and all I wanted to do was put an end to myself and the baby, which was completely out of character for me. So I told my parents I was going for a walk to get some air. It was winter in Jersey, so they instantly thought that was a red flag, but didn't want to cause an explosion, so they let me go. Almost an hour later, I'm still not back, and my parents begin to panic and drive around the neighborhood looking for me. We had a little mini beach by my house, and the water wasn't quite completely frozen over yet. My parents found me inches away from it, about to throw myself in. They dragged me back to the car to take me home. My grandmother and aunt were visiting from Sicily. My aunt is a Carmelite? I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry, and has always been a strong religious woman. When I walked back in the house, I remember being so angry I wanted to punch her in the face because all she kept doing was staring at me. So I snapped, and I asked her what she was looking at, and she responded with, "A demon." She continues to tell me that I was at the very least heavily influenced by a demon and near possession. She told me to go to the mirror and look at my eyes. They weren't mine anymore. I have bright gold green eyes, and when I looked in the mirror they were dark brown, black. My facial features did not look like mine either, and that's when I began to freak out and beg my aunt to help pray for me. She grabbed a handkerchief that was blessed in one of the most sacred places in Italy, pressed it tightly to the top of my head, and started praying quickly. I could barely understand her. She'd emphasized certain words and applied deep pressure, almost smacking my head with a handkerchief. As soon as the last word left her mouth, she was done praying. I saw a black mass shoot from my head and to the corner of the roof and disappear out the house. I immediately felt as if a huge pressure was released from my head and I could breathe again. The house looked different. I could notice light coming in from the windows again. I felt and looked different again. I was back to my old self. I thought it was fully over. Boy, was I wrong. That night, while laying in bed, fully awake, I rededicated my life to God and promised I would do everything in my power to keep my baby safe, and that he too belonged to him. Well, I guess Satan got super pissed because not long after, I felt a pressure on my chest, as if something was trying to get inside. I've watched enough horror films to know what the hell was going on. I finally was able to yell for my mum. She came upstairs and I explained what happened. My mum was a bit skeptical and generally tired of all my shit, so she told me I was having a bad dream and just to go back to sleep. About 30 minutes later, I was still awake, trying to fall asleep, when I felt the same pressure on my chest. I fought it so hard with my mind to not let it in. I could literally feel it trying to make me succumb to it. To the point my back arched and all my limbs and joints went completely rigid. Like in the exorcism of Emily fucking Rose. I fought so hard it wasn't able to get in. So its new tactic was to drag me off the bed. I felt invisible claws in my skin gripping me and trying to take me under wherever that was. Under the bed and straight to hell maybe. I don't know. But what I did know was that the second this thing got me on the ground, my body and mind would no longer belong to me. So I fought with every fibre of my soul to stay conscious and pray. I was finally able to yell out loud and my aunt came in the room. I cried and explained everything to her. She believed me. She gave me her rosary beads to wear to keep me protected from evil, especially while I slept. There were times I still felt the presence of evil that night, thanks to Leo's grandmother, but she was no match for my aunt's faith and prayers. Once I had my son, all the negativity stopped bothering me, and I found the strength to go to bed at night without needing to wear rosary beads. And that's the story of how I almost became full-blown possessed. Wow, Jesus Christ, that's intense. Wow, shit. I hope you're okay. I hope you're well. That's crazy. I wonder if the grandmother did really have anything to do, because I mean, being a religious woman, did she really want to inflict that kind of pain, or was she one of those religious women where it's like a little bit backwards? Okay, let's do one more audio story. This is called A Portal in the Mirror, probably.
Hi, Robert. I absolutely love your channel, and I love the makeup and ghost stories videos. It's one of my favorite things to watch right now. I've just recently found your channel, so I'm kind of marathoning through all of them, but I wanted to submit a story and kind of contribute because I love it so much. So I want to give you a bit of a background on just me. When I was 8, I had a near-death experience, and ever since then I've been very sensitive to unexplained things and sort of, I guess, the other side. I don't really know how to explain it, but so I have a lot of stories and things that have happened over the course of my life, but I have one in particular that I thought would be a really good one to share with you because it involves a giant mirror, and I know how you feel about those. So to give you a background on the story, I had just moved to a new state. I grew up in Florida in the US, and I moved a few years ago to Virginia, and I was in a new apartment building. So I had been there for probably about 6 months or so, but I was in just the new apartment building. So the apartment building itself was only a few years old. So the experience didn't come from the building itself. I think it was attached to me, not the building. But so anyway, my bedroom had the bed on. So if you walked through the door, the bed was on the far wall across from the door, sort of in the center of that wall. And then to the left of the door was another wall in the bedroom that had a dresser with drawers and a huge mirror attached to the dresser with the drawers. So the mirror was facing the bed. They were sort of centered in the room facing each other on opposite walls, if that makes sense. So it was just a normal day, like nothing crazy was happening. There wasn't anything special about the date. But I was woken up in the wee hours of the morning, so it was probably 2 or 3 in the morning, and I just woke up out of my sleep and sat up, and I had this overwhelming feeling of not only like heaviness and darkness, but of sadness and kind of desperation. And I was confused, obviously, but I had all of these feelings and it was very overwhelming. And I looked up. Basically, as soon as I sat up, I looked up and across the room from the bed, which was this huge mirror. And typically, even sort of in the early hours of the morning, if it was a clear night, the moonlight would kind of shine through this balcony door that was on one of the walls in the bedroom, so the moonlight would shine through, and it would still be kind of light in the room, even if it was dark, so you would still be able to kind of see where you were going if you had to get up and use the bathroom. And I remember it being just like very dark, darker than normal, and there was no reflection in the mirror. So I was awake, feeling all of these heavy, sad, desperate, dark feelings, and I looked across the room at the mirror, and there was no reflection in the mirror. It was just sort of dark and cloudy. And then I start to see what looks like a hand reaching out of the mirror towards me. And then I started to see a face sort of appear behind it, like as if the hand was like coming out of the mirror, and then the face was sort of like slowly appearing out of like the dark fog, and it felt so familiar, but I couldn't quite place the face. Like, it didn't have any real distinguishing features where I could place who I thought that I was seeing. And then I also felt another presence with that one, and it felt sort of like these two separate presences. The one that was reaching out to me was the sort of like sad, desperate feeling, and then the other presence was the dark, heavy feeling. And I just remember looking at it and thinking, I don't want you here. So I said out loud, you're not allowed here. You can't come into this place. And the hand sort of stopped trying to move out of the mirror, like it got stuck. And I heard a voice that, again, sounded familiar, but I couldn't quite place it, saying, I'm sorry, it was never supposed to be this way. I'm sorry, it wasn't supposed to happen this way. I'm sorry. And it just sort of kept repeating that over and over again. And I said again, you're not allowed to be here. I don't want you here. You have to go. And after I said that, the voice stopped and the presence sort of sunk back into the mirror, and then everything cleared up. So suddenly the moonlight was coming back through the window or through the door, and I could see in the mirror my reflection of the room. So I could see myself sitting on the bed, and I could see the rest of the items in my room and my partner in the bed next to me, who did not wake up and had no idea what was going on. And after that, once the feelings went away and I no longer felt that like heaviness and darkness, I just laid back down and went back to sleep. And I woke up in the morning and I told my partner, and they were like, that's very strange. Are you sure you weren't dreaming? And I definitely wasn't dreaming, because I had woken up, experienced that, and then just went back to sleep after. Which is kind of common. I will just wake up in the middle of the night and then go back to sleep for various reasons. I'm kind of a light sleeper. But anyway, so the next morning we had that conversation, and then I told my sister, who was still living in Florida, about it. And then I found out, I can't remember the timeline exactly, if it was later that day or later, a few days later, that one of my friends that I had grown up with, and since we were very little up until we were probably teenagers, and then we kind of grew apart once everyone started going to different schools and moving away and things like that. I found out that they had passed away under very tumultuous circumstances, and there was not any resolution between that person and the family after they had passed away. It was very sudden and terrible. And I believe that it was that person trying to get some kind of message across, because there was a lot of question surrounding their death, and the ruling of the coroner and the police report. A lot of the family doesn't agree with the cause of death, and so I believe it was just that person trying to get a message across somehow. I don't really know what the other feeling was, that dark, heavy feeling. But yeah, and after that I moved the mirror, and I actually got rid of that whole mirror and dresser, and no longer have a mirror anywhere near my bed. So yeah, that's one of my stories, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I did. That is terrifying. And this is why you shouldn't have mirrors facing your bed or in your room, especially if they're antique mirrors. Large bodies of water. What else? I don't know. Grass? No, not grass. I always feel like they're like a gateway for spirits. Okay, so that is all we have a time for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for all your amazing stories as well. This is my lady who died in a bath because she couldn't stop wearing diamonds. Looks nothing like that at all, but you know, we have to come up with an excuse to use a palette. So that's what happened. Thank you so much for your stories. You can go ahead and send your stories right here. We do have that recording of a one more story coming up. It's about 15 minutes long. So you can just play and listen to that story. I'll put it on at the end here. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you on Wednesday, and I will see you Sunday, and then I'll see you Monday again for some more ghost stories. Have an amazing week ahead. Just be good people, and good people means respecting other people, wearing a mask. Just wear a fucking mask, and then the sooner you wear one, the quicker we won't have to have this conversation about wearing masks. Anyway, thanks again, guys. Stay tuned for this next ghost story. It is a good one. All right, guys, see you soon. Bye. Was I recording? Yes. Bye.
Hi, Robert. First of all, I just want to say that I absolutely adore you. Thank you so much for your makeup videos. They've given me so many tips. I'm a makeup enthusiast myself. I do a lot of crazy looks on myself. And I just wanted to say that you've inspired me so much, and I think you're fantastic. Your Ghost Story Mondays are also one of my favourites. So yeah, okay, let's get into this. So growing up, I'm sorry, I keep saying it's just one of those things. My mum would always say that I got the emotions of the rest of my siblings. I have an older sister and 2 older brothers. And I was a very emotional child, very sensitive, she would say. I still am. But growing up, didn't really notice anything strange, but then around the age of 15 maybe, I would get this strange feeling. Not always when I was alone, it could always be when I was around people. I would sort of get, that really strange feeling when you think you've seen a shadow in the corner of your eye and you turn around and nothing's there. I would always get that, always get that. And then 16 years old, I had it one day and I turned around, nothing was there, but I had like a flash in my eyes of someone that looked just like my mum, but younger. I didn't think anything of it at the time, just thought it was a little bit strange, and just carried on as usual. This happened quite a few times. Now, when I was 20, I was living with my first partner. Strange things started to happen in that house, and at first I thought it was maybe just a house. It was an old house, but the kettle would start turning on by itself, and I thought, well, maybe it's just electrical. And then cupboard doors would open, just odd things that would happen most days, to be fair. But I didn't feel anything bad. I didn't get scared, neither did he. He was freaked out, but I told him, don't worry, there's nothing wrong. Now, about a year after living here, my mum and my sister decided to have what's called angel cards read. Very similar to tarot cards, as far as I'm aware, but they're called angel cards. Now, when it came to my reading, I sat down and this lady said, she says, you're very sensitive. I said, yeah, I know, my mum tells me this all the time. She says, no. She says, you're sensitive towards the supernatural, ghosts, spirits, those kinds of things. And this freaked me out a little bit, but I just followed along. I was like, okay, so what does that mean? And she said, have you experienced anything? within your life, in this house or previous? And I was very cautious. I was like, maybe, you know, you don't want to give too many things away, because I was quite skeptical. Now, she said to me that there was a lady that was with me in spirit, and she was trying to communicate with me. She asked me then, which I maybe should have mentioned before, she asked me then if I was ever woken up during the night, which coincidentally I had been, and it tended to be between 2 and 3 o'clock most nights. I don't know why, but I was fast asleep and I would sort of get this pull to open my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, there was nothing there. Nothing going on at all. Now, this lady said that apparently this time is where, if you are open or sensitive toward these kind of things, spirits will try and communicate with you at that time. And I had a light. Apparently my aura was very bright towards spirits. Again, a little bit freaked out, and asked her, well, what does this mean? She says, this lady is trying to communicate with you. If you have seen her, if you've heard her, she's trying to communicate. I said, well, what is she trying to communicate? She says, I don't know, but she's here. She wants to know that she's okay and she is safe. Now, I asked if she could explain to me what she looked like. And she said the best way she could explain it was she looked like my mother, but younger. Now, looking back on family photos, my grandma is the spitting image, or my mum is the spitting image of her mum. But my grandma died when my mum was 10. So she was only 40 when she died, and this made her younger than my mum was currently when I was 20. So that's the only explanation I can think about that's my grandma. I asked then, well, if I'm getting my grandma trying to come through, can anything else come through? And she said, yeah, of course. But when you get the good, you can also get the bad. Now, this freaked me out. So I asked, how can I stop this? She gave me some exercises to do before I went to sleep, and all in all, it tended to work. Now, when I remarried some good few years down the line, I hadn't seen my grandma or felt my grandma for a good amount of time. At all, probably since that angel reading. But in this new house that I was in, which is over 100 years old, it never felt bad, still doesn't, except when I go to sleep. I can fall asleep absolutely fine. But you know when you get that feeling that something is possibly watching? You don't want to open your eyes in case there is, but you're also thinking in the back of your head, well, don't be daft, there's nothing there. So you force yourself to open your eyes. And then there's nothing there, so you go back to sleep. But on a couple of occasions, and I don't know whether it was a dream or not, but it felt really real. Really real. And even now, just thinking about it's freaking me out. I'm sorry. Bear with me. Okay, sorry, I just had to take a quick break there. Okay, so the first time this happened, it again was after I realised what time it was. It ended up being about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was fast asleep. And I'm one of these people that when I turn over, I tend to wake up a little bit because I suffer with a bad back and it hurts. So I did this night, And as I turned over, my eyes slightly opened, and I turned away from my husband and towards the window. But between my bed and the window it's like a very dark corner. I for a split second saw something crouching in that corner. It wasn't stood, it wasn't a dark shadow that was stood, it was something crouched. And the first thing that came to my mind was a gargoyle. You know gargoyles on top of churches or wherever? That's the first thing that came to my head. It didn't have bright shining eyes, it didn't have red eyes, it was just dark. And I thought to myself, no, I didn't see that. It's one of those instances where you think, no, I didn't see it. Close your eyes, go back to sleep. Or open your eyes and make sure it's not there. I made myself open my eyes again and I saw it again. And I thought I was having a nightmare. I really did. I really thought I was having a nightmare. I closed my eyes shut. And in my head I shouted, and I don't know why, but it was the first thing that came to my head. I shouted for my grandma. I shouted for her. And I went back to sleep. I turned away from the corner and went back to sleep. The next night, the same thing happened again. I turned over. I opened my eyes. And there in the corner, it was crouched with these black eyes staring at me. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't close my eyes this time. It's like they were being opened with matchsticks. I couldn't move. I couldn't close them. Again, in my head, I screamed for my grandma. And this thing, this gargoyle, this demon, this spirit, this whatever it was, smiled at me. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this now. It just smiled at me. It didn't move. It just stared and grinned. I closed my eyes. I managed to close my eyes and I shouted out loud. I shouted for my grandma out loud. Now, I hadn't seen her. I hadn't felt her for years. You're talking 12, 13 years. I woke my husband up, and when I looked to the corner again, this thing wasn't there. I turned on the light. My husband was asking if I was okay. He thought it was a nightmare. I explained what went on, freaked him out. He couldn't sleep for the rest of the night, so we stayed up. This happened for a further 5 nights. A further 5 nights. I wondered if my grandma had moved on and she wasn't able to help me, or whether this thing was actually there. I was questioning everything. I didn't know what to do. On the 7th night, it happened again, but this was different. Again, I opened my eyes, and it was there, crouched in the corner, staring at me. Shouted for my grandma in my head again, and it grinned at me. But this time, it grew. Whether it grew in size or whether it just stood up, but it seemed to encompass the whole corner of the room to a point where it seemed to cover me, and it was heavy. and it was cold, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't close my eyes, I couldn't scream, I couldn't move. The only thing that I could do was shout for my grandma in my head. I was screaming for it. Come, please help me. I don't know what to do. And then, a second later, it was like it was never there. This darkness just left the room. I was then able to move. I could close my eyes, I could blink, but I realised that not only was that darkness gone, but the room had a lightness to it. Like the actual air was bright. I can't really describe. It wasn't like there was a light on. It wasn't a bright light that I saw, but the air was light and bright. Sorry, I don't know how to explain it. But when that dulled down and the room went back to normal, my husband woke up and I had tears down my face. I had been crying and I didn't realise. Now, I've not had anything since then. And I'm wondering if it was my grandma. I'm wondering why it took 7 nights for this creature or spirit or whatever it was to make its move, I suppose, because for 6 nights it was just sat there. On the 7th night it grew bigger, whether it was a last ditch attempt to try something because it knew that something was coming to help me. I don't know. I'd like to think my grandma was there and helped me. I don't know what this thing was or why it was there, but I've started to do the mental exercises that the lady with the angel cards gave me originally. And for the last 5 years, I've not had anything, which is good. I wouldn't wish anything like this on anybody. It was one of the most terrifying things I've ever been through. So yeah. I hope this was okay for you. Let me know what you think. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. And I just want to say that I absolutely love you. Keep up the good work. I'm sure the look that you've created is absolutely amazing. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much. That is terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. I don't know how you mentally dealt with that throughout that time. Sounds awful. It sounds absolutely terrible. It's another situation that people can be like sleep paralysis, but then at the same time it's like, well, you felt it as real, so what's the situation, you know? Thank you so much for sending it in. That was very well told, so thank you.